We are living in an age where longevity is increasingly achievable. But sadly, cognitive clarity does not always accompany those added years. The real tragedy isn't simply growing old. It's the heartbreaking reality of losing our essence, our identity, before life's final chapter has even been written. Too often, we miss the earliest clues. We shrug them off, chalking them up to just aging. But what if I told you that specific emotional shifts, especially sudden intense feelings of hatred, could be critical warning signs? Not just of mood changes, but of something far deeper: early cognitive decline. But before we dive deeper, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Leave a comment below with your city or country. I always enjoy seeing where everyone's watching from. It creates a sense of connection, no matter how far apart we may be. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more wellness tips like these. These emotional outbursts are not just quirks of aging or expressions of a grumpy disposition. They can be neurological signals, flashing red lights indicating that the brain is struggling to regulate emotion, reason, and empathy. When a person who once met life with humor, patience, or openness begins to exhibit sudden hostility or irrational aversions, it should prompt more than concern. It should prompt investigation. Imagine someone who once thrived in the company of family, now lashing out at gatherings, bothered by noise or accusing loved ones of imagined slights. Or someone who embraced diversity and innovation, suddenly rejecting new cultures, technologies, or ideas with contempt. These are not just personality shifts. These are disproportionate emotional reactions, often paranoid in nature. The world hasn't changed, but their ability to interpret and engage with it has. This behavioral transformation often stems from deterioration in the brain's frontal and temporal lobes, areas responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, social reasoning, and empathy. As these brain regions begin to falter, the ability to moderate emotional responses and interpret social cues fades. Reason and nuance are replaced by emotional intensity and rigidity. Hatred becomes a stand-in for understanding, and irrational aversion replaces thoughtful engagement. These changes frequently leave loved ones bewildered, interpreting the behavior as bitterness, stubbornness, or depression. But the truth is far more complex. These emotional disturbances may be among the first visible symptoms of a silent, progressive neurological condition, particularly dementia. Not every sudden mood swing means dementia is looming. But when such behaviors, especially irrational hostility, become frequent and feel out of character, they shouldn't be dismissed. Early detection matters. Recognizing these emotional distortions as biological in origin, not just psychological or circumstantial, allows for timely medical evaluation and potentially life-changing intervention. One particularly telling red flag is a sudden, deep-seated hatred of change or novelty. While it's natural for people to prefer familiar routines as they age, an exaggerated resistance to even minor changes can be a sign of cognitive inflexibility, a trait often associated with early dementia. This is more than just disliking new restaurants or technology. It reflects the brain's reduced capacity to process novelty and adapt behavior, a function heavily reliant on the frontal lobes. Cognitive flexibility, the brain's ability to switch between thoughts, adapt to new information, and respond to shifting environments, is essential for decision-making, problem-solving, and emotional resilience. In healthy aging, this skill may slow but remains functional. But in the early stages of neurodegeneration, this flexibility breaks down. Individuals may become obsessive about routine, reactive to the smallest disruptions, and increasingly rigid in thinking. It's not stubbornness, it's neurological impairment. As adaptability fades, the world starts to feel unfamiliar and even threatening. Social withdrawal, fear of new experiences, or irrational distrust of others becomes more common. These shifts can quickly shrink a person's world, limiting interactions, reducing stimulation, and accelerating cognitive decline. That's why early recognition and compassionate intervention are critical. Approaching these changes with understanding rather than frustration can help families take the first step toward professional assessment and care. Another overlooked sign is growing hostility in social settings, particularly toward unfamiliar people or situations. This can appear as moodiness, irritability, or even aggression. But it may actually reflect a breakdown in social reasoning, one of the brain's most complex and fragile functions. Social reasoning allows us to interpret tone, body language, emotional nuance, and context. When the brain, particularly the right frontal and temporal lobes, begins to deteriorate, this skill erodes. Suddenly, normal social interactions become confusing or threatening. What was once a simple conversation may now feel like a confrontation. Misinterpretation becomes common, leading to uncharacteristic outbursts, suspicion, or social isolation. This isn't simply a bad day. It's the brain struggling to comprehend and trust the world around it. In all of this, the message is clear. Don't overlook emotional changes in aging adults. Sudden hatred, rigidity, and social withdrawal may not just be emotional. They may be early neurological symptoms. By recognizing these patterns for what they are, biological changes rather than just personality shifts, we can ensure that those affected receive the support, evaluation, and treatment they need. Because early awareness isn't just helpful, it's life-changing. As the brain begins to undergo cognitive decline, one of the earliest and most misunderstood changes can be found in the realm of social behavior. An individual may begin to misinterpret neutral or friendly social cues as threatening, reacting with unexpected defensiveness or hostility. These emotional reactions often appear in scenarios where the person once demonstrated warmth, patience, or empathy. They may lash out in mild disagreements, become irrationally suspicious of new acquaintances, or display heightened anxiety in everyday social interactions, especially those involving unfamiliar people where subtle social interpretation is essential. Interactions that were once routine, such as chatting with a store clerk or participating in a family gathering, can now provoke intense unease. Caregivers and loved ones might observe the individual suddenly avoiding social events, withdrawing from family activities, or making accusatory remarks about others' intentions. In some cases, the person may isolate completely, retreating from situations they once enjoyed. Crucially, this hostility or withdrawal should not be mistaken as a reflection of the person's true character. Rather, it reflects a breakdown in the brain's ability to accurately interpret social and emotional information. The distress the individual feels is real, but it arises from confusion and fear, driven by the brain's declining capacity to follow conversations, interpret body language, recall familiar faces, or grasp nuanced meaning in social settings. This breakdown typically stems from degeneration in the frontal and temporal lobes, regions responsible for social cognition, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Too often, these behavioral changes are attributed to aging or assumed to be personal issues like irritability or stubbornness. But in reality, they are neurological in nature, and recognizing them for what they are enables earlier medical evaluation, better support systems, and proactive cognitive care. Left unrecognized, this social disintegration can deepen mistrust, accelerate isolation, and hasten both emotional and cognitive deterioration. Another frequently misinterpreted symptom is a strong, often irrational rejection of technology. When older adults abruptly refuse to engage with digital devices, whether it's a smartphone, a tablet, or a television interface, this is often dismissed as generational resistance or preference for simplicity. But in many cases, this aversion reflects a neurological struggle with cognitive processing, not just unfamiliarity. Engaging with technology requires the brain to integrate multiple layers of cognition: memory, sequencing, problem-solving, abstraction, and adaptability. When executive functions, typically governed by the prefrontal cortex, begin to falter, even simple digital tasks can become cognitively overwhelming. What appears as confusion can feel to the individual like failure or embarrassment, resulting in anxiety or frustration. But rather than admitting this difficulty, the person may externalize it, declaring the device useless, dangerous, or stupid. This emotional reaction is not a conscious decision to reject the modern world. It often conceals deeper deficits in processing and adapting to complex, abstract systems. In healthy aging, mild hesitation with new technology is expected. But when the response becomes one of hostility or avoidance, especially if it occurs suddenly, it may signal early-stage dementia or executive dysfunction. Recognizing this pattern allows loved ones to provide emotional support, not to push technology, but to compassionately understand the cognitive load and consider if a neurological evaluation is appropriate. Equally significant is the loss of humor and self-awareness, often overlooked but profoundly impactful. A once vibrant personality who enjoyed jokes, satire, or playful banter may now appear emotionally flat, confused by humor, or even offended by lighthearted remarks. This is not a matter of shifting personal preferences. It is often the result of damage to the frontal lobes, the area of the brain responsible for processing complex emotions, irony, and social feedback. Humor, sarcasm, and nuance demand a high level of emotional intelligence and social cognition. When the frontal lobes decline, individuals lose the ability to understand layered meaning or gauge appropriate responses. Laughter may fade. Social jokes may be met with blank stares, confusion, or even aggression. This decline often extends to self-awareness as well. A person may make inappropriate or embarrassing remarks in public, dominate conversations without noticing discomfort, or behave insensitively, unaware of how they are being perceived. To family members, these shifts can feel jarring, even hurtful. They may interpret the behavior as indifference, rudeness, or narcissism. But more often, these traits stem from biological deterioration in brain areas that support empathy, introspection, and behavioral regulation. This is particularly characteristic of frontotemporal dementia, a form of neurodegeneration that presents with changes in behavior and personality long before memory loss becomes evident. It's vital to understand. These transformations are not intentional. The person is not choosing to be difficult or insensitive. Rather, their brain is losing the structural and functional integrity that once supported emotional nuance, social decorum, and self-reflection. Recognizing these behavioral and emotional shifts as potential signs of dementia, not as flaws or failings, can dramatically improve early detection and care. It allows families to approach the situation with empathy and awareness, opening the door to proper medical evaluation, support planning, and the preservation of dignity as the condition progresses. By looking beneath the surface, we can begin to see that what may appear as defiance, irritability, or withdrawal may actually be the mind's cry for help, a neurological signal that should not be ignored. Timely identification and intervention in response to the early behavioral symptoms of dementia is not merely important. It is essential in slowing the disease's progression and preserving both the quality of life and personal dignity of the affected individual. While memory loss is often considered the hallmark of dementia, it is behavioral and emotional changes that frequently emerge first, serving as the brain's earliest distress signals. These changes may manifest as irrational anger, abrupt social withdrawal, heightened suspicion, or exaggerated emotional responses that feel out of character. Importantly, these are not simply quirks of aging or random shifts in personality. They are neurobiological warning signs, subtle but meaningful cues that deeper cognitive systems are beginning to falter. Recognizing these shifts requires vigilant observation, emotional intelligence, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. It involves looking beyond the surface of behavior to ask, what has changed? Why now? Far too often, families dismiss early symptoms as stress, stubbornness, or just getting older. But this delay can cost precious time, during which intervention is most effective. When caught early, dementia-related changes can be addressed through a combination of therapeutic interventions tailored to the individual's needs. These may include cognitive therapies that stimulate brain activity and maintain function, medications that manage symptoms or delay progression, structured routines that provide comfort and reduce confusion, nutritional strategies that support brain health, lifestyle adjustments such as physical exercise, stress reduction, and social engagement, all of which are far more impactful when implemented in the early stages of decline. Early recognition also opens the door for meaningful conversations about future care, legal and financial planning, living arrangements, and most critically, the individual's own wishes and preferences. When these discussions happen while the person is still cognitively able to participate, it empowers them to make choices about their future rather than being excluded later when their ability to communicate or reason is diminished. This proactive approach doesn't just slow cognitive decline. It upholds human dignity by reinforcing autonomy, agency, and emotional connection. It shifts the response from reactive crisis management to a compassionate, informed, and collaborative journey of support. The truth is, what may seem like a sudden burst of anger or an irrational refusal to participate socially is sometimes far more than moodiness. It is the brain's cry for help, a signal that its once reliable processes for interpreting, reacting, and engaging with the world are beginning to fade. Recognizing that cry in its earliest form, before memory loss steals the spotlight, can make all the difference. So when you notice an older adult suddenly expressing uncharacteristic anger, distrust, or emotional volatility, pause and look deeper. Pay attention to the story behind the behavior, because sometimes that bitterness or abrupt change isn't just frustration. It's the brain calling out, trying to be heard before the lights begin to dim. Speak with a healthcare professional. Ask the hard questions, because recognizing these subtle warning signs could make all the difference between reacting too late and responding in time. If this video helped you understand the emotional side of early dementia, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Share your story, ask a question, or support someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights on brain health, aging, and how to protect the ones you love. One step, one sign, one story at a time. Thank you.